Thank you all. Hopefully you have enough energy to keep up for this last session before lunch. So my name is Giovanni Leoni. For the past 20 years, I've been deep into business processes, developing analytics, AI, and as mentioned, also previously was part of leading the algorithmic and AI ethics work at IKEA, and now doing it in practice with Credo AI. For me, it's always been important purpose to see how can we make better business with data. But also, it's been important for me how to bring values up front and to be values-led. One of the things that is very personal for me is that we can do this right. We can make choices today and make the design of the utilizing of technology. So a general purpose technology like AI gives positive impact on society. I'm of Italian heritage, but on my mother's side, she's Sami, coming from the northern part of the hemisphere. My great-grandfather was displaced because of another general purpose technology, where they created dams to create electricity. Today, we can do better. Today, we can actually gear up the utilization of AI to create positive impact on society. And also seeing compliance or laws not as something that hinders, but enables society at large. What I'll cover is the new normal around AI and AI governance. The business case, why we should invest in it, why we should see it as something that develops and builds value, how organizations need to be able to build the capability of doing so, and in the end, what the future lies in front of us. So I would want to make it as tangible as possible for you. The new normal is that we've gone from an history of seeing technology and AI as an enabler of making processes more efficient and productive. But the new normal going forward is that we need to have it governed. We need to be able to have it under control. We need to be able to know what data we're using and the algorithm we're using, to be able to keep track of the data we have within our organizations that we are developing and procuring through digital solutions. The new normal is that we're at any given time should be having the full accountability of what we have part of our organization's products and solutions. And a part of that is that to have AI governance as an integrated part of doing business. A part of this movement of the new normal of having AI governance is the EU AI Act, but it's not only a regulation. It comes in the spirit that one wants to enable human rights in a digital society. To be able to see that one enables trustworthy AI across not only the 27 countries of EU, but actually influencing the world in total. It is about really seeing it in a bigger context that we need to know what we're doing with data, algorithms, in its context. So seeing the EU AI Act as just a regulation or just for compliance is just half of the picture, while it's rather a direction of how we will be using technology going forward, and aiming higher is preferred. While being at IKEA, we were always talking about not going for the minimum, but actually aiming for the highest level, so one could reach and be compliant across the board, no matter where one was active. Generally, we see the expectations on the rise. Movement within the US, Canadian, Brazilian, Singapore, Australian, and many other markets that regulation standards is becoming the new norm because we want to direct it towards a direction where people in society are positively impacted. But also, the expectations from customers, users, and society at large are demanding that we are responsible with the use of algorithms. And the key thing here is not the regulation standards or details. It's about recognizing that the new normal and the reference of good, that it should, of course, deliver great products, great services, being relevant for how you use it, while at the same time not having negative impact. So all this sounds good, but in the end, it's all about money, because it's money that fuels businesses. And the business case for this is quite important, because we've been many times having almost like a white noise of hearing the risks, the limitations, how innovation is hampered down. And I think we need to change the narrative. Not only myself standing here, but everyone needs to be able to shape the narrative of AI governance actually bringing business. It's about limiting the risks and costs and bringing more value. So when we look upon the challenges that AI governance does in practice, it's about managing the lack of control. The introduction of algorithmic processes, AI, and specifically generative AI is all over the place, whether that is across different functions or procured through digital solutions. We need to keep track of that. Have a one view, what do we have? I come across that conversation on a daily basis that we don't know everything that we have within our organization. How can we keep track of that? How can we at all know who is responsible of what? And this is increasing as AI is adopted across all digital solutions, and digital solutions are a part of a digital transformation of organizations. This will just get of a higher need. This creates directly or indirectly inefficiencies. Projects are started, solutions are purchased. When you're kicking off development projects all across the board and is not utilizing key components that can be reutilized, one needs to kill projects. You need to be able to maybe stop development of certain solutions because it isn't aligned with the directive one has as an organization. And I think most organizations I've talked to during the past year that have been using or wanting to use or tested generative AI in text generation, code generation, or image generation, they've said, like, how do we manage the brand risk? How can we use it, adopt it for efficiency, while limiting the brand risk it has if it does something unintended? And of course, the liabilities. We see that within explicitly stated in the proposal of the EU AI Act, everything between 6 to 7% of annual turnover. And we'll see where it lands, but it's quite clear that it will be a liability to not be able to manage this, in addition to the brand risk. So AI governance is about limiting this, keeping control of it. But that's just one of the pieces of the coin of this business case. What makes people excited is what does it bring in terms of value. First and foremost, the lack of AI adoption, specifically in Europe, is we have a lack in confidence in AI. I don't understand it, is something I've heard for the past 10 years while developing AI projects. I don't understand what it does. I don't understand where the data comes from or how the model works, and that has just exaggerated over time. We need to be able to make it understandable so we can keep track of it and have confidence specifically for the leaders that are non-technical. These leaders that are either responsible for the development of AI solutions or responsible for the procurement of AI solutions are accountable. No matter if they're technical or not, they need to be informed. They need to be fully aware what they are accountable of. This will build a higher speed in adoption of AI. It will create a higher awareness where to invest and where to say no. It's also about that we need to leave 20th century process behind us and actually acknowledge that we're in a 21st century with an extremely fast-moving technology. And the only way of keeping up and adapting to that is to be able to keep track of it and merge the organizational needs with the technology modernity. Being able to adapt to the changes that are happening to technology, to the expected expectations on the outside of the organization, and the compliance need going forward. And in the end, people buy things from organizations they trust. Trust is a premium that we need to acknowledge. When we trust someone that they are managing our data, that they are managing how they are providing us with products and services, we will come back to them. We'll put a premium on that, and we'll be willing to pay for it time and time again. The lack of trust will have people leaving products and services. Or, in terms of citizens, they'll vote for someone else. Nothing of this can be done if you're not building this capability for an organization. This cannot be bought just off tap. This needs to be built for every organization. And the reason why it needs to be built and can't be outsourced or be done by someone else is that it needs to be an integrated part of an organization. It's just not the tech team. You can't leave it as a bottleneck in the compliance function. You need to be able to build this all across the organization, the technical team, risk management, compliance, leadership, and across the board. And the reason why you want to do that is to future-proof your organization. This is the new normal. We will not be going back of having less control. We will not have less demand. It will not get less complex. This is as simple as it is today. It will just getting more complex. And future-proofing is not about the details of exactly what law, what standard, or what the details of exactly if you're within or without the borders of compliance. What is important is about gearing up an organization to be able to manage this. The four things to build this capability that I've been going through a couple of times is to have a strategy and policy that intentionally shows why would you want to be governing AI. Quite importantly here is that there is great sources of inspiration and advice on this. But one thing that I would want to leave you with here, because there's 100+ guidelines or strategies, the most important one is, please make it tightly connected to your existing organization strategy and policy. It needs to follow that. It needs to be an embedded part of your existing strategy. If you're values-led, make it values-led in digital. If you want to do the right things for, let's say, your health care workers that you're working towards or with, do it aligned with that. If you're serving citizens, align it with that. If you're serving that you want to have the best service ever in terms of a digital solution, align it with that, because it needs to feel like a part of the organization. To create then a blueprint that executes it. And the blueprint is not only a technical process, it's about embedding every part of the organization, all the way from procurement, legal, risk management, the data science teams, the product leaders, and the C-suite. Who should be engaged where? And how can they be engaged in a way that makes sense? When going through this process and doing this with organizations that I've done a few times, what one realizes is that it's hard. It's hard to bring people of different expertise and perspectives and languages around the table, and sometimes they've never even sat around the same table before. But when you do it and you find a common agreement of what is important in terms of processes and a blueprint for it, it makes things go faster. And here, the only way of making this happen is the engagement necessary. If you don't have your C-suite engaged in this, or the executive leadership, start there. Without that, it doesn't really matter. You need to be able to be engaged in business processes, the business and the non-technical people. You need to have your data scientists with you to be able to enable AI governance in practice. You need to be able to know that the procurement specialist will be asking the right question. And that only goes through engagement. And finally, things are moving just too fast for us to do anything in theory. The only way of actually making this work is through doing. Small steps of practice, use case by use case, testing how it works, how it's aligned between strategy to blueprint, engagement. And by that learning, one can gear it up towards what is relevant for your organization. So I'll finish up with the future of trustworthy AI. How do we see that from the reality me and my fellow colleagues are living every day talking about AI governance? And that is, we're not certain of the details as of today. But what we're certain of, that organizations need to get started and moving and building capability. This will not go away, but rather there will be a benefit of being proactive in starting this journey. So the three things, and the only things that you maybe want to be left with today, if you're forgetting everything else, is to get educated, learn, read, talk with people around Trustworthy AI, the EU AI Act, and AI governance. Figure out what makes sense for you in your organization. The second thing is to then move into actually assessing what is the expectations on your use cases. What are the internal expectations? What are the users and stakeholders' expectations? What are the expectations from a compliance point of view or a standards point of view? What are the expectations from your vendors, suppliers, and other key stakeholders? To then start. Start small. And it's not about perfection. It's actually just moving ahead. So that's my presentation. Thanks. If anyone have a question, we have a minute. Yes?
Hello, my name is Tine Åge, and I come from the University of Copenhagen. Thank you for a very useful presentation. In my daily work, I work with small companies who want to work with AI, and we try to help them adopt to AI. And one of the problems that we often find is that their data is not very good. Their data is not very good to run AI on it. And that, I think, is a huge gap for us in our help for these companies. So what are your thoughts about using synthetic data to help companies?
I think there is great value of utilizing synthetic data. I think one of the key things that one would need to think about is why you want to use it, in what context, and what are the risks connected to it. I would say synthetic data or generated data can in many ways augment and support small and medium enterprises that are maybe lacking in resources. We have seen many of the generative AI tools that are coming out is supporting that for internal processes. But I would say that what one needs to be wary of, and specifically if one starts to utilizing that for processes that are in connection to, let's say, users or coming out towards society, is the risks of it not, of course, having the challenges of not being truthful, accurate, representative. So I think one of the key things that one needs to have in mind is to be able to see the benefits of utilizing it, definitely explore it, having controls of being human in the loop, and be very, very cautious when it starts to come into sensitive contexts or sensitive use cases. And it's about being able to go through those processes and having a controlled approach, even being a small organization, to have that top of mind. Thanks. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Leonie. Give him a warm applause for the last presentation before the lunch.